Today's video is sponsored by Skillshare. What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Little disclaimer before we get started. Welcome to my little office thing here. This is like a room in my house that I call my office, but that really just means that I play video games in here. But I've always wanted to be able to film at home and not have to hire or bring along a friend to do videos. So I invested in all this gear. I'm gonna show you guys really quickly. So this is what I'm looking at. So yeah, I invested in all of this stuff, which hopefully will mean that I can make more videos for you guys, because I can just walk in here and instead of wasting time on Call of Duty, we can talk photography together. So I'm really stoked on this, and I wanted to let you know that I'm not a very decorative person. That's why my room in here is super boring. I'm sure Kelly will see this and then demand I do something about it. So maybe I'll put up like basketball posters or something, or fairy lights. Yeah, but leave a comment down below. Let me know what you guys want me to put on the walls. Maybe I'll just blow up like a giant picture of Matt Day's face and put it on the wall. So we are talking about Leica cameras today, but the main question we're going to be asking and answering for you, the viewer, is should you invest in a Leica camera? I get asked this question quite a lot because a Leica camera is a premium, or what I would call a luxury item. And so sometimes it's scary, even for me still it's terrifying to spend, you know, over $750, $1,000 on a camera. And as many of you may know already, Leica cameras can go much higher than that in price. So today I want to kind of talk about my personal history and experience with the Leica brand, as well as hopefully give some more insight, and maybe you'll be able to decide if Leica is for you or maybe if you should hold off or not. In 2019, I bought a Leica M6. So I had been shooting film for 4 years before I ever bought a Leica. The only camera that I had bought up until this point that cost over $1,000 was a Mamiya 7 with a 65mm lens. So it was quite scary for me to pay $1,500 for a film camera body. Although in 2019 when I bought this, I had been making money from photography for 5 years, since 2014, and I was accustomed to paying that kind of money for a digital body. I knew that the digital body was returning money back into my bank account for various jobs, and this camera was most likely going to be a hobbyist camera, or I may share about it on social media, but there was no direct correlation between this financial investment and me making money back off of it. So it was quite scary to pay that $1,500 in 2019. Not only did I sink $1,500 into the body, but I went all out and wanted to shoot Leica glass, and I ended up purchasing a Leica 35mm Summicron Aspherical version 2, I believe. I'll have a picture in here of that first Leica M6 I bought. So with most cameras, I got my M6, I had a lens, and I was sitting on a $3,500 US camera setup, which for a film setup was quite terrifying. I lucked out and I had a commercial job where I had to go out of town to 3 different cities in about a 7-day time span, which was very tiring but also very sick. And I had just gotten this Leica M6, and so I think I brought 2 or 3 rolls. And after I got done with that trip, Kelly, my wife, also was graduating with her 2nd college degree, overachiever. And so I also finished off a roll of HP5 at her graduation party and at her graduation. So all was going good. I had got to take my Leica on a travel trip, which is one thing that I think Leicas excel at. And I also was getting to document just some family memories, which can you do that with a much cheaper 35mm setup and get probably the exact same images? Of course. But I had bought this inspired by Matt Day and others for having kind of a quiet, non-intrusive camera. And so all weekend at Kelly's graduation, I was going nuts, just taking pictures everywhere at graduation, at the graduation party, pictures of her with family, and it was awesome. Until I got my scans back and realized that my Leica M6 had some problems, to say the least. I would come to find out, as you can see in the photos here, that my Leica M6 that I purchased, my very first Leica Experience, had a problem with the shutter curtain. That basically meant that for certain shutter speeds, whether it was 1/25 or 250, the camera worked flawlessly, but for other shutter speeds, say it was 500 or 1000, that it didn't work and I would get these giant blurs in my camera. So I go a year into 2020 and the pandemic hits and I'm getting bored, and so I decide to sell a large amount of my camera collection to go all out and not waste, but spend or invest an incredible amount of money into a Leica black paint MP. Full transparency, in 2020 I paid $4,499 US for a black paint Leica MP. That was, at least the good news was told to me that it was brand spanking new and that a roll of film had never been put in it. At some point in that year, I did transition after about 6 months from the 35mm Summeret to the 35mm Summicron V4, otherwise known as the king of bokeh or bokeh. I also really enjoyed that lens, and that is kind of where my most previous Leica journey just ended within the last month or so. So should you, wherever you're at right now in the world, watching on your iPhone or your computer, invest in what I would call the most luxury film camera item that you can. And I think that really depends on where you're at, not in photography, but where you're at financially. Let me explain. I am not saying that a Leica camera or an M-body or a Leica lens necessarily takes that better of photos than any other 35mm camera. At the end of the day, these are all kind of the same. Are some maybe slightly better than the next? Definitely. But they are just little boxes that lift up a curtain and let light in. And so I want to be clear, don't feel like you need a Leica camera to make good images, because anybody worth their salt in this game will tell you that's just not true. Before you're opening your wallet to buy a Leica, I think there's one thing that I would look for, at least personally. I'm always looking, when I'm investing any serious kind of money into a camera or anything, is it going to hold its value? And with Leica, I can say indefinitely with the utmost confidence that not only are Leica cameras holding their values are actually increasing. The next part of the equation kind of gets into personal finances, which is where I want to land this plane, because I actually do believe that this is really not so much a camera question, because like I said, you can go buy a 35mm setup for $250 or $700 or even $1,000, which $1,000 could potentially still be much cheaper than a full Leica setup and make the exact same images. And even if the Leica may be slightly better, for all the Leica heads out there, even they will admit that you would have to get pretty detailed and looking pretty close up on a Lightroom file to actually tell a difference. If you're new to film photography, I definitely would not suggest going straight into Leica. The very first film camera that I ever had, and that I used for probably the first 9 to 12 months before I really truly knew, after doing my scanning at home, taking my film to a really crappy lab, doing all of that, I really knew after 9 months that I loved it. But that camera was a Canon AE1 that I bought for $75 off of Craigslist. And was it the best thing in the world? Absolutely not. But I loved it, and I learned so much by shooting that Canon AE1. And if I even had the finances, which I didn't, but if I did, or if you did, and I went straight into this giant setup, I feel like that kind of would rob you of the experience of working your way up to a Leica, as well as there's just something special and fun and kind of working out all the technical difficulties of film and growing in that craft with a little bit of a, camera that you can just kind of toss around. So I do believe that a Leica film camera is definitely not for everyone. But here's who I do believe that Leica cameras are for. They are very great for street photography. They are very great for travel photography. They can be great for portrait photography. A Leica camera is great for documenting moments with your family. I feel like if you can say, hey, I love 35mm photography, it is the primary route I want to go as opposed to medium format. I put myself in a position to save up this money. I've worked hard. I've grinded to purchase this because I want to know what this is like. I would say go for it. Pay the cash for one. Start off with a cheaper Voigtlander or Zeiss lens starting out if you have to, because the body alone, getting used to it and working with the Leica M body is just I hate to say it, but it's an unparalleled, unrivaled experience. I love my Nikon F3 and I've chosen to keep it over my Leica MP, but I'm not going to tell you that using the Nikon F3 is more enjoyable than using an M6 or an MP, because in my opinion, it just wasn't. I know we covered kind of a lot, or at least me sitting here talking in this room alone, it felt like we covered a lot, but I hope that if you were thinking about taking the plunge into a Leica system, this helped you, and I hope that if you were maybe thinking about making a risky decision, that you pump the brakes and just know that, hey man, you can get it done with a ton of other systems. There will always be a chance to buy Leica down the road. As always, I really appreciate you guys swinging by the video. Please leave a like if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Lastly, if you're not following me on Instagram, I do upload there at least a couple times a week, just sharing film photos, iPhone photos, whatever it may be. So you can follow me somewhere around here on Instagram. Hopefully with this setup, we'll be able to make some videos a little bit more consistently and upload more than once and get back to maybe 2 or even 3 times a month. So yeah, we'll see you guys for the next video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes for creative and curious people just like me. On Skillshare, you can explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in a wide variety of topics. From music to photography to business or leadership, I'm sure that Skillshare has a class for you. When I first started photography, the person that I looked up to the most was a guy named Chris Burkhardt. Lucky for you and I, Chris has a class on Skillshare right now. The class is called Outdoor Photography, Shooting at Sunset, Sunrise, and Night. I've come a long way in my photography career, but I'm always looking for a little edge to up my game, and I've loved getting to see how someone like Chris approaches sunset and sunrise. One of my favorite things about Skillshare is that it's curated specifically for learning, meaning there are no ads and they're always launching new classes so you can stay focused and follow wherever your creativity wants to take you. And the best part is, it's less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. Right now, the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description below will get a free trial of premium membership so you can hop on Skillshare right after this video. Focus. Nathan, if you use that clip, I'll kill you.